It's that time when everyone's talking about goals and resolutions.
Yeah.
But honestly,
Yeah.
the whole thing, I don't know about you, but it can feel a little overwhelming to me. Like, where do you even start?
Right.
So that's why we're diving into SMART goals today.
Absolutely.
We've got a script all about this framework. And hopefully this can make goal setting a little less daunting. Maybe even help you actually achieve those things you've been, dreaming of.
I think a lot of people get kind of tripped up right at the beginning
Yeah.
because they're just not clear on what they're actually aiming for.
Yeah.
Vague goals, they just lead to vague results.
Okay, so it's more than just making a wish list. It's about getting really specific.
Yes.
Is that where the S in SMART comes in?
Exactly. The S stands for specific.
Yeah.
So let's say your goal is to travel more.
Mm-hmm.
That's a nice thought. But it doesn't give you any direction. A specific goal would be something like, take a 2-week trip to Japan in the fall.
Right.
You see how that paints a much clearer picture?
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. But what about the goals that are harder to define? Like, what if I want to be more mindful? How do you make that specific?
That's a great question.
Okay.
So sometimes specificity requires us to dig a little deeper.
Oh.
So instead of just being more mindful, maybe it's about having a daily meditation practice,
Yeah.
for 10 minutes. Or maybe it's about just being fully present during meals,
Mm-hmm.
putting your phone away, really savoring each bite.
I like that. So you're finding those concrete actions that kind of embody that bigger concept.
Exactly.
Okay, so we've got the S covered. What's next?
The M in SMART stands for measurable.
Okay.
You need a way to actually track your progress and know if you're moving towards your goal.
All right. I'm one of those people who really struggles with deadlines. So how important is the T in SMART goals for making them actually work?
It's crucial.
Okay.
The T stands for time-bound.
Right.
Which basically means setting the deadline. Without a deadline, it's easy for goals to just, drift along forever. Think about it. If you've got a deadline looming, it creates a sense of urgency, and it helps you to prioritize that goal.
So even if I'm not like a naturally deadline-oriented person, having that time frame can actually be a good thing.
Absolutely. It's like having a built-in accountability partner. Plus, it allows you to break down the goal into smaller milestones.
Okay.
So if you have a year to achieve something, you can set like quarterly or monthly checkpoints along the way.
Okay. I'm starting to see how this all fits together.
Yeah.
But let's be honest. Sometimes we set goals that are just a little too ambitious.
Yeah.
Is that where that A for attainable comes in?
You got it.
Okay.
Attainable goals are challenging, yes?
Yeah.
But they're also realistic.
Right.
It's about assessing your current situation, your resources, your constraints. Don't aim for a marathon next month if you haven't even started running.
So true. Some people argue that being too rigid with time frames can actually backfire. What's your take on that?
Well, there's definitely a balance.
Mhm.
Time-bound doesn't mean rigid. It's about having a target date in mind, but also allowing for some flexibility.
Right.
Life happens, things come up.
Right.
It's okay to adjust your timelines as needed.
Of course.
The important thing is just to have that time frame in place to guide your actions.
So being time-bound is more like having a roadmap than like a strict set of rules.
Exactly.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
What about the R for relevant? How do you know if a goal is truly relevant to your life?
This is where it gets really interesting.
Mm.
Relevance is about aligning your goals with your values and priorities. It's about asking yourself, does this goal truly matter to me right now?
It's not just about checking things off a list. It's making sure that those things on the list actually reflect what you care about.
Exactly. It's about connecting your goals to something deeper. So let's say your goal is to save for a down payment on a house.
Okay.
That's specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and time-bound.
Right.
But what's the driving force behind it?
I mean, is it about wanting to feel more stable? Or maybe the freedom to design your own space?
Precisely.
Yeah.
Maybe it's about creating a place where you can have all your friends and family over. Build a garden, or finally get that dog you've always wanted.
Okay.
Understanding those deeper whys can make that whole journey so much more meaningful.
I love that. It's like you're adding this whole other layer of motivation on top of it.
Yeah.
It's not just about the house. It's about the life you want to have in the house.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And when you're connected to that deeper purpose, it's so much easier to stay motivated, even when those challenges come up.
Right.
Because let's face it, they always do.
Okay, so what happens when you hit those inevitable roadblocks? Does this SMART framework help with that too?
It can. Remember how we talked about flexibility?
Right.
The SMART approach isn't about being rigid. It's about having this framework that can adapt to real life.
Okay.
So let's say you set a goal to write a novel in a year, but then you get a new job that's super demanding, and it leaves you with way less free time.
Yeah. Does that mean you just like scrap the goal altogether?
Not necessarily. You might just need to adjust your timeline.
Oh.
Yeah, extend it to 18 months or 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
Or you could adjust your writing schedule.
Mm-hmm.
Like carve out smaller chunks of time each day instead of longer blocks.
Right. So it's more about finding ways to make the goal work with your current reality.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And sometimes it might even mean reevaluating the goal itself.
Okay.
Maybe writing a novel isn't realistic right now,
Yeah.
but you can still commit to writing a short story each month.
That's a good point. So sometimes you have to kind of scale back those ambitions without completely losing sight of the bigger picture.
Right. It's about finding that sweet spot
Yeah.
between challenge and achievability,
Okay.
and just being honest with yourself about what you can realistically handle.
Yeah.
There's no shame in adjusting a goal.
Right.
It actually shows self-awareness
Right.
and a commitment to making it work.
This is making me think about all those New Year's resolutions that people make.
Yeah,
How many of those could be transformed with a little smart magic?
probably most of them.
Right.
The beauty of this framework is that you can apply it to basically any area of your life.
Mm-hmm.
Career goals, health and fitness, personal growth, relationships, you name it.
Okay, so for someone who's like never tried setting SMART goals before, what's the one thing that they should take away from this deep dive?
I would say the most important takeaway is that setting SMART goals isn't about adding more pressure to your life.
Oh.
It's about providing clarity, focus, and a sense of control.
Mm.
It's about empowering yourself to take those dreams that are swirling around in your head
Yeah.
and turning them into tangible actions.
So less about being perfect and more about making intentional progress.
Exactly. And even if you don't perfectly achieve every goal that you set,
Right.
that process itself teaches you so much
Mm-hmm.
about yourself, your priorities, and what it really takes to create lasting change.
Okay, before we wrap up this deep dive, I have to ask, what are some of the common pitfalls that people run into when they're trying to use this framework? I mean, it seems like there's a lot of potential to, go off track even with the best of intentions.
Oh, you're absolutely right. One common pitfall is just trying to do too much at once.
Yeah.
People get excited and they set like a ton of goals in every area of their life.
Right. So instead of spreading yourself too thin, maybe it's better to just focus on one key area.
Exactly. Pick one thing that you really want to focus on
Okay.
and just channel all your energy there.
Mm-hmm.
Once you've made some progress on that goal, then you can move on to the next one.
Right.
Another mistake is setting goals that are just way too big or complex.
Right. So it's important to break those down into smaller, more manageable steps.
Absolutely. And don't forget to celebrate those small wins along the way. That's like giving yourself little bursts of motivation to keep going.
Okay, so we've talked about the how of setting SMART goals.
Right.
And even some common pitfalls to avoid. But before we wrap up, I want to go back to something we talked about earlier, the why. You mentioned how connecting your goals to your values can make the whole journey more meaningful.
Right.
Can you say a little more about that?
This is where the real magic happens.
Mm.
So let's say your goal is to learn a new language.
Okay.
That's great. But why is that important to you?
I mean, is it to connect with your heritage, to travel more confidently, or to maybe even boost your career?
Exactly.
Yeah.
When you really dig into those deeper motivations,
Mm-hmm.
it adds a whole other dimension to the process. It's like weaving your values into the very fabric of your goals.
So it becomes less about just reaching the destination and more about aligning the journey with what really matters to you.
Precisely.
Oh.
And when you do that, it's amazing how much more fulfilling the whole process becomes.
This has been such an insightful deep dive.
It's been fun.
I feel like I've gained a clearer understanding of SMART goals and a renewed sense of motivation to actually put this framework into action. What's one final piece of advice you'd give to our listeners who are ready to embrace the SMART approach?
Don't overthink it.
Okay.
Just start by setting one SMART goal.
Just one.
That's it. And then take that first step.
Mhm.
Remember, it's a journey. Every step you take, no matter how small it is, brings you closer to where you want to be.
I love that. It's all about taking action and trusting the process. For our amazing listeners, we hope this deep dive has inspired you to approach your goals with a fresh perspective. Remember, you have the power to create the life you want, one SMART goal at a time.